Pandesal Forum here at 83-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. We have with us a very special guest, His Excellency Huang Xilian, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in the Philippines. And also we have with us 3 reactors. Aside from China Ambassador, we have 3 reactors with us. Former Secretary Ronald Llamas, also Professor Bobby Tuason, he is in the Bicol region. And the 3rd reactor will be Mr. Lucio Pitlo III. Today, our topic is very interesting and very historic. The Ambassador Huang Xilian will discuss his assessment of the recently concluded once only every 5 years, the 20th CPC National Congress of China, its impact on the world and on the future of China-Philippine relations. We will request everyone to give an opening statement. I will start by giving a brief introduction of our distinguished guest. Everyone knows Ambassador Huang Xilian because he is, I think, one of the friendliest ambassadors in the Philippines today. He is respected, and for people who are young here, he is also one of the most popular diplomats in Facebook. I would love to watch his Facebook updates. I get educated. He has tens of thousands of fans in Facebook. Ambassador Huang Xilian came to the Philippines in 2019. He is very young, but with a lot of diplomatic expertise and experience. He studied at Beijing Foreign Studies University, Bachelor of Arts, later earned a degree, Master of Arts with distinction in economics from University of Manchester in England. Then Ambassador Huang has been engaged in Asian affairs and served in multiple posts in Beijing, including overseas, ever since 1989. Prior to coming to Manila, Ambassador Huang was in the ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta, Indonesia. His overseas experiences include being Deputy Chief of Mission of the Chinese Embassy in Pakistan, Political Counselor at the Chinese Embassy in the United States, Deputy Chief of Mission of the Chinese Embassy in Brunei, and First Secretary of the Chinese Embassy in India. That's why even though he's very young, he has a lot of diplomatic experience. He was also Deputy Director General and Counselor of the Asian Department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China. Later on, he was also Chief Negotiator, very important, for the China-Bhutan border talks. He was head also of the Chinese Working Group and co-chairman of the Mekong Cooperation. He was also head of the Chinese Working Group and co-chairman of the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea talks between China and the ASEAN region. Among his many distinguished honors, he was conferred by the President of Pakistan the Special Award of China-Pakistan Friendship. Of course, last but not the least, he is a great friend of the Philippines. Let us welcome His Excellency China Ambassador Huang Xilian for his opening statement.
Everyone, Secretary Elon Musk, Professor Pitlo, and of course my good friends, Wilson Lee, the organizer. Thank you for organizing this very warm, get together. And we have Dr. Henry Lim, my very good friend, Cecilio, and Mr. Cole, and also we have the very young couple in front. And we have a lot of new friends and old friends, especially the friends from the media. I'm very thankful for your interest in the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, which was just concluded 3 days ago. And it's a great pleasure for me to be in this bakery, which is 83-year-old, older than all of us here. And I know this bakery is very well known, but it's a pity I have not tasted the bread here yet. So maybe next time I will, try my luck to taste it here. And I think it's very timely as the week-long National People's Congress just concluded successfully. And this is the once every 5-year meeting. It's an extremely important meeting for the people of China, and I believe also for the rest of the world. And today I would like to just share, some of the information about this conference to help you to understand what the conference is, what kind of outcomes the conference have brought about, and also, focusing on the new phrase in China, very popular phrase in China. We call it the path to Chinese modernization, or in brief, Chinese modernization. This is much talked about phrase in China now, and I also would like to share with you what implication China modernization, for China's future development, and for the Philippines, and for the future of China-Philippine relations. This meeting, as shown on a screen, is a meeting, as I said, take place at a very critical time. That's when we have finished building the monetary prosperous society in all respects in China. I will explain to you what it means. And I think that there are few very important outcomes of the meeting. So first of all, it has elected the new leadership of the Communist Party of China. And there are few tiers of the leadership in China. For this meeting, it has elected the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. Central Committee, this is the body to make decision for the Communist Party of China and the Chinese government. So it comprises of 205 people, the Central Committee. Above the Central Committee, we have elected another group called Politburo. The members of the political bureau, 24 people. They are the, body which make, decision on major issues. And above the political bureau, out of the 24 people, we have elected another 7. We call it standing committee. Means they work routinely, on the party affairs and policy making. And of course, at the core, on the top, of the Central Committee, Political Bureau, Standing Committee. It was the General Secretary. And we are very happy that President Xi Jinping was elected again to serve as the General Secretary, the top, leader of the Central Committee and all the whole party. So this is a very strong leadership which will guide us in the next 5 years. And apart from electing the leadership, the Congress has adopted 3 major resolutions as shown on the great screen. One is that report of the 19th CPC Central Committee. That means the previous committee, which has just completed its mission before this session. So this committee, after 5 year hard work, they have submitted a report to the Central Committee and to the whole party, and to report what they have achieved and what they have outlined for the future next 5 years development plan. So the second report is that the weight report of the party's 19th Central Commission for discipline inspection. So the Communist Party of China has 2 major committee and commission. One is Central Committee, policy making. Another one is that Central Commission for discipline inspection. This commission composed of about 171 members. It supervises the whole party, to guide the party, to punish the corrupt ones, the one who inactive, the one who are not competent. So this is also very important commission to make the party healthy and clean. And number 3 resolution is an amendment to the party constitution. That means we have included some new progresses in our theory, in our practice, into this constitution. So these are 3 major outcomes of our party. And during the National Congress, General Secretary Xi made a very important report to the Central Committee. And in the report, he summarized the major achievements of the Communist Party of China and the Chinese people in the past 5 years and 10 years beyond. And he shared with us that there are 3 major historical achievements that we have made in the past 10 years. You want to look at the screen. The first one is that we embraced the centenary of the CPC. That means last year, the Communist Party of China was 100 years old. We celebrated the 100 years old party. Well, it is 100 years old, but it is still very healthy. Just like this building is 83, but it's still very strong. Second is that we usher in a new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Actually, from the 18th Congress, we have begun to usher in such a new era. We call it new era. Number 3, we have eradicated absolute poverty and finished building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. That means we have completed the first centenary goal. According to the party plan, long vision. By the time of 2020, we should have completed the first centenary goal. That means the first step. And next step, from now on until the mid of this century, we will complete the next goal. And we call it the poverty, absolute poverty. In the past 10 years, we have eradicated more than about 100 million people. We have lifted more than 100 million people out of absolute poverty. And this is the first time that we have eradicated poverty in the history of China. And we have, while we talk about building a moderately prosperous society in all respects, this concept came out in China in early 1980s. While it came out, it means that the Chinese people will have sufficient food to eat, sufficient clothes to wear. But we have raised the standard from time to time with the march of time. So now, the moderately prosperous society means we have a lot of criteria, including the per capita GDP above 10,000 US dollars. So last year, our per capita GDP have reached 12,000 already, much higher than the criteria we have set for this. And so we call it, this is a high level, that's accomplishment of such a goal. So these are the three achievements in the past 10 years. So while summarizing the achievement in the past 10 years, this National Congress have also made it clear the CPC mission in the future. So that is to lead the Chinese people of all ethnic groups in a concerted effort to realize the second centenary goal of building China into a great modern socialist country in all respects and advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts through Chinese modernization. So, a few elements. One is that from this day forward, we have shifted to a new mission. That is to realize the second centenary goal. What is the goal? Is to build China into a modern socialist country in all respects by 2049 or 2050. And to advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts. Means China once was the most developed, the biggest economy in the world 100 years ago. Now what we are trying to do is to rejuvenate our nation, to restore what we had. And the mean is through Chinese, we will achieve that through Chinese modernization. So this is the task and mission ahead of us. Apart from this, we have made it clear we will achieve the goals in a two-step manner. That's the two-step, we call it two-stage arrangement or two-step plan. That is from 2020 to 2035, we will realize that basically socialist modernization. That's the first stage. Basically means that's not a high level, that's the basic modernization. Second is that develop China into a great modern socialist country. Look at it. What is the modern country that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful. This is our vision before the end of mid of this century. Next page. So here we comes to the phrase Chinese modernization. So why we call it Chinese modernization? It's just a modernization. It is a Chinese modernization, means it is a modernization of Chinese characteristics. So we have, 5 features here as for the Chinese modernization. First of all, it is a modernization of huge population. That means for developed countries in the world, in the past 300 to 400 years, they have developed modernization for the population of less than 1 billion. But for China, what we are doing is to modernize the population of 1.4 billion. That means it's more than the total population of those who have been brought into the modern society. Second is that it's a modernization of common prosperity for all. Means it's not modernization for some parts of the population, but it's a modernization for everybody. No one will be left behind. Number 3 is a modernization of material and cultural ethical advancement. That means we are not only to provide adequate, sufficient material to the people, but we also need to meet the demand of the people for cultural and ethical advancement, cultural need. Number 4 is that is modernization of harmony between humanity and nature. Means we will materialize modernization without the cost of the nature. We will achieve through the harmony between humanity and nature. That's why you have seen there are more and more ecological parks in China. There have been a great improvement of environment in China. There have been the raising of awareness of the environment protection in China in the past years. Number 5 is a modernization of peaceful development. Means that we are not going to take the path of modernization through war, through plunder, through colonization as it was pursued previously by some countries. So this is the 5 features of modernization. And then next page. In order to realize the modernization with 5 features, we need to have clarify the 9 requirements. That means only by meeting the 9 requirements we can achieve that. So the first achievement is requirement is upholding the leadership of the Communist Party of China, because this is a precondition. Only the leadership of under the leadership of the Communist Party of China can the people of China achieve all those that's goals and objectives. Second is upholding socialism with Chinese feature. Socialism means, of course, common, that's prosperity, common development, that's equality, equity for the society. So these are all the features. Number 3 is pursuing high quality development. Means the modernization will be achieved through high quality development. This is a very important phrase in China in our discourse. High quality development. And And then the next one is developing whole process people's democracy. So this is an interesting, that's a term, whole process people's democracy. That means this is our democracy is different from the democracy of others. Democracy is a common value for the mankind. But the democracy of the West might center at the voters, but our democracy will center at the whole people, not only part of the people. Voters and non-voters, we serve everybody. And our democracy will emphasize not only on the result of the democracy, that means election only. Our democracy will emphasize on the process. That means to make sure the full participation during every part of the process, and the full participation of every classes, in the society. The most extensive participation throughout the whole process. That's our concept. And next one is that enriching people's cultural lives. That means the people has ever growing demands for cultural lives. So we need to work better, work harder for this. Next one is achieving common prosperity for all. That's what I explained already. Next one is promoting harmony between humanity and nature. That's what it was. And next one is building a human community with a shared future. This is a basic concept proposed by the Communist Party of China during the New Era. Means it is a community of shared destiny for shared future. For not only one country, not only parts of the countries, but all countries in the world. It is a community of shared future, since we are now living on the global village. No one can escape from any harm that modernization might cause damage. So the next one is creating a new form of human advancement. That means we look at the history. We have developed our humanity for 1,000 years. We try to explore some better form of human advancement for the whole human being. So these are the 9 requirements. And so this is basically what the main messages conveyed by the National People's Congress. And there are quite a lot of new phrases, new that's concepts. And I believe that this will be understood better in the future by the rest of the world. And the whole Chinese people are studying very hard to understand what's going on. And actually, they all represent the will of the people. Like the General Secretary, News General Secretary was elected again. President Xi Jinping was elected again as the next General Secretary. It also represents the will of the people. Of course, all the missions, all the aspirations represent the political will, the will of the people. Next. So, to understand all this I have described brief view, I think we need to focus on 3 keywords here. One is that self-determination. Now we focus on the Chinese modernization. So, what is the Chinese modernization? What implications the Chinese modernization have for China and the Philippines? So, first is that self-determination. So, our modernization, we have explored the Chinese modernization for decades, since 1911. Since 1911, we have introduced National Assembly election. We have Congress, we have Senate in the past also, we have Parliament, and it had led us to war law a lot of warlords fighting each other for 20-something years. So only after the Communist Party of China fought for 20 years, the new China was founded, and then we began to explore the path to modernization. So after decades of hard working, we have found our path of modernization, very unique path of modernization. And the Communist Party of China adhere to the leadership of the CPC. So the modernization will be, that's realized under the leadership of the CPC, and will, follow our original mission and original, that's aspiration of the CPC. What is the original mission and original aspiration of CPC? Is to serve the people, to bring better welfare to the people wholeheartedly. And so because there is no precedent to follow and there is no ready-made path to take, so we have explored for decades and finally find this path. And we believe in this world there are more than one road to modernization, not only the road by the Western country. There is neither one-size-fits-all modernization model, nor standard modernization model for everybody. So you need to find your good self. So the implication for China is that we need to continue to press ahead on this path. And for the Philippines, we also believe you need to, find a way, which fits your own national condition, meets the demands of your people. And our modernization, the major difference would be, it will not be the capital-centered, expanded capital materialism and pollution first, governance second, that kind of modernization. We have drawn that kind of lessons from the history that we will follow. We will not repeat that kind of mistakes again. The second key word is openness. In our experience in the past decades, reform and open up has always been the key move determining China's destiny. That means our social and economic development in the past decades has heavily depended on reform and opening up. And so will our modernization in the future. We need to continue to depend on reform and opening up. So, now, through the reform and open up since late 1970s, we have become the second largest economy in the world. We have become one of the, we have become the largest importers of the goods of the world. I think now more than 140 countries have become the largest trading partner of China. And we have become the second largest trader in services. So in the past decades, the economic growth of China has contributed by more than 30% to the whole world economic growth. This is a big contribution. And so that's why President Xi, General Secretary Xi emphasized again and again that during the session, during Congress, that China's door to opening up will not be closed, but will only open wider and wider. The third key word is people-centered. This is the development philosophy of the Communist Party of China. We serve the people all wholeheartedly. And so we will continue to pursue this philosophy to be people-centered by promoting rural revitalization. In the past decades, we have developed the urban area to a great extent. Now we will emphasize on the rural revitalization to make it a growth point for China in the future. And also we will emphasize on common prosperity, we'll emphasize on high quality development, and we will try to accelerate what we call it a new development pattern. And all this with the purpose to improve the quality of people's life. This is a major purpose of the Communist Party of China. And the fourth key word is peacefulness. As I said, that the Communist Party of China is resolved to realize modernization and to realize the rejuvenation of our nation through peaceful means. Means we will never take the path of some country in the past centuries, by taking the path of war, colonization and plunder. We would materialize our dreams by working together with the rest of the world, by promoting even closer economic, social, cultural relationship with the rest of the world. So our road of modernization will not only benefit the Chinese people, but will also benefit the rest of the world. And I think this one has been decided by the genes embedded in our culture. The Chinese culture, you can see the Great Wall, extended for more than 5,000 kilometers. What's the purpose? Original purpose: to defend, not to aggress, to be aggressive. So, in the past few years, we have proposed a few very major initiatives based on this kind of thoughts. Say, the Belt and Road initiatives is for common development. And in the past 2 years, we have proposed another two major initiatives. One is that Global Development Initiative. Another one is Global Security Initiative, focusing on respectively security issue and development issue. And so that's how to understand better the Chinese modernization. So I think that's now the vision is there, the roadmap is there, the action plan is there. Now it's time for action for the Communist Party of China, the government of China, and the people of China. And we believe by doing so, the CPC has not only provided a clear sense of direction and certainty for China, but also for the rest of the world, including the Philippines. China and Philippines, we can go hand in hand and benefit from each other. Since we are both developing countries, we have a similar national conditions, we have always learned from each other, benefit from each other. So we believe that both sides need to focus on the future and grasp the new opportunities of cooperation. A few points. One is that next page. Yeah. China's development, next page.
PowerPoint next. Yeah.
The first one is that China's development path will provide a new reference and choice for the vast number of the developing countries. And we noticed that in PPBM's first SONA speech, he specifically put forward the goals and measures to realize the modernization of the Philippines. We understand this is also maybe the second phase of the modernization. It's quite encouraging for everybody in the Philippines and the rest of the region. So I think that's we have quite a lot of similarities. We can learn from each other. I've been discussing with a lot of friends here. They try to understand our modernization. They all share with us your modernization. We can learn from each other, and we believe that Philippines can also draw some wisdom and courage from our experience. We'll be more than happy to do that, and we will move forward hand in hand. And we believe that we must firmly grasp the destiny of development and progress in our own hands and take the path of modernization that suits our own national condition. This is good for China. I think it's also good for the Philippines. Second is that China is opening to, next one, the outside world will open up new major opportunities for neighboring countries and region, especially the Philippines. We have been the largest trading partner for the Philippines for 7 consecutive years. Actually, according to your statistics, our trade volume stood at about 40 billion US dollars last year, but according to our statistics, our trade volume stood at almost 90 billion US dollars, much bigger than that.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have been your largest trading partner, your largest, the importer of the agricultural products, and one of your largest investors from overseas. In the past 6 years, China has invested, the total investment of China in the Philippines amounts to 161 billion pesos, means about 4 times that of the previous 6 years. It's increasing, and after the new administration took office, I can see that a lot of investors from China have shown the great interest to come to invest in this country, not only from private sector, but also from not only from state-owned enterprises, but also from private sector. So I think that's China will provide a super market for the Philippines, and as I understand that your export to China has been growing very rapidly, and in the past 2 years, which contributed greatly to your economic growth in light of the that kind of doom world economic situation. So last year during the Shanghai Imports Exposition, I think that you have harvested greatly. You have signed a lot of deals, and one of the deals is on agricultural produce, 800 million US dollars. That's big. Thank you. And so I think that next one, China's inclusive development will further promote China-Philippine cooperation and improve the quality of life of the people. We know that your new administration has been striving to improve the livelihood of the people, and so are we doing. So I believe that in the future we will focus more on the consumption, domestic consumption. We will import more. We will improve the quality of the people's life, and there are a lot we can strengthen our cooperation in various fields. That's why we have identified 4 key areas in light of all these kind of visions. One is that's agriculture. The 4 key areas of cooperation between China and Philippines in the next 6 years. one is agriculture. We know agriculture has everything to do with people's life. So agriculture will become the most prioritized area of cooperation. I know that Dr. Henry Lim listened so carefully since he's an agriculture man expert. And next, of course, is infrastructure. And talking about infrastructure, we will not only strengthen infrastructure such as road and bridge and expressway, but also in infrastructure, new infrastructure like big data, 5G. You know that China's development in previous years have benefited greatly from the development of 5G. We have developed more than 60% of 5G stations of the world in the past few years. And another area is that new energy, the energy area. We know that your future development rely heavily on the, energy. So we need to develop new energy. In the past few years, China's new energy vehicle have been developing so fast that we have become the leading player of the world. I think that's the first half of this year we have exported more than half of the vehicles across the globe. We are becoming the largest exporter of new clean energy vehicles. I just came back from China. I saw so many beautiful new energy, clean energy vehicles in the streets. It's really developing so fast, and much different from last year when I went back to China. So, and last but not least is that people-to-people exchanges. That's we need to focus on the 4 areas of cooperation. I believe this kind of cooperation will bring much more dividends to the peoples of our 2 countries. And next one, China's Peaceful Development will promote China and Philippines' efforts to jointly maintain peace and stability in the region. By focusing on development, we should, place our differences in a appropriate position. That means, not to allow the differences to be in the way of cooperation, not to allow our differences to become disputes, and not to allow our differences to affect our overall relationship and mutual beneficial cooperation. So there is, I think, China and Philippines both are facing a new strategic choices. And we always believe that development is the key to solving all issues. That's our experience. And we also believe development is also the key for Philippines to solve all issues. And we are happy to see that with the assumption of the new administration, your economy has picked up good momentum. So now, Asia has become the highland of development and hotspot of cooperation. And a lot of people believe that this is a century of Asia. And the focus of global economic development has shifted to Asia. So I think that we have a good chance. So we believe, that's according to our experience, we believe your future will be also deeply rooted in your own national development, and construction will be deeply rooted in a very good neighborhoods of friendly neighborhoods, and will be deeply rooted in an emerging family, big family of Asia. So we hope that we can work together. We would be more than happy to see that the Philippines will take on our express train. And this kind of cooperation will bring more dividends to the Philippine people and will provide more momentum to your economic and social development. And so we look forward to working together to create a new golden era for our relationship. So I think that's all I wish to share with you. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Next, we'd like to invite three intellectuals to give their reaction statements, and then we'll go to the open forum. Please get ready with your questions. Kindly message them to me via text 0917-848-1818 or via Zoom chat, those people in Zoom. We are also on Facebook live stream. Next, we'd like to invite, thank you, Ambassador Huang. We are excited to hear the reactions of our three intellectuals and analysts. And then later on, Ambassador will answer some questions about his interesting, enlightening talk. We learned a lot, Ambassador. Next, we'd like to invite to speak a former secretary. He is the former presidential advisor for political affairs, one of the top geopolitics and political analysts in the Philippines, former Secretary Ronald Monares Llamas. Among his background, he was former director of Development Bank of the Philippines, former executive board of trustees, also of Freedom from Debt Coalition. Also, he is with San Miguel Group, also director, and also many. He has a long list of credentials. I'd like to just make it short lang kasi he has a very long biodata, very impressive. So let us welcome former Secretary Ronald Llamas.
Maraming salamat, Wilson. Thank you so much, Wilson, including the disinformation that I'm an intellectual. No? Wilson has been trying to invite me several times here. I'm glad that at last I'm here and honored to be with Ambassador Huang. Thank you, Ambassador Huang, for giving us a very clear, eloquent, and painstaking explanation of the developments in China in general, and in particular with the important Party Congress of the Communist Party of China. When I was a minister, when I was a cabinet secretary in 2011, one of my first acts was to organize a session with our cabinet to discuss China and more specifically the Communist Party of China. I invited four speakers. One of them is Chito Santa Romana, who eventually became our ambassador to China, unfortunately, who died early this year in China. Second is Eileen Babiera, the former head of the Asian Center in the University of the Philippines. Unfortunately, she also died during the first wave of COVID in 2020. Third is Popo Lutila, who is now the Secretary of Energy, who gave us an institutional memory of what happened during the 9 years of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in relationship to China. And lastly, Dodo D, the Vice President of Unilab and brother-in-law of President Aquino, who gave us a perspective on what is happening on the business side in China. Unfortunately, that was the first and last seminar we organized because we felt that Filipinos have a very minimum understanding of China, especially with the Communist Party of China. We cannot understand China without understanding the Communist Party of China. I would like to thank Wilson for organizing education fora like this. I think we need more of this in this country, no? Especially about our huge and important neighbor, China. I can only remember one party congress which is just as important as the last party congress, which finished last Sunday. It was the 1978 Party Congress in China, where they officially abandoned the Cultural Revolution and started what they now call the Economic Revolution. That is why it's very important that we discuss what happened during this Party Congress in China. Yesterday, while I was attending a delegation of French businessmen hosted by the Makati Business Club, I was having a cup of double espresso. No? And I poured some sugar in my double espresso. It gave me an idea how I will start my reaction to the presentation of our dear ambassador here. No? I think we have to first understand the mindset before understanding the developments in China. Putting sugar in a bitter coffee, I think, explain in a simple way the dialectical method in China. How they do things, how they look at things. And if we don't use that as a lens, we will have a hard time understanding what is happening in China. Most of us trained in Western education are trained in a very ontological manner, in a very binary manner. Negative and positive, good versus bad, democracy versus dictatorship, black and white. The Chinese mindset is not exactly like that. It is about synthesis, antithesis, no? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's about looking at the negative and the positive, no? And looking at how the negative and the positive will create a new qualitative phenomenon. Looking at recent history in China, I think we can use this mindset. And this is a mindset where we can learn from the experience of China. China is basically divided in three major epochs. No? First is the political revolution, led by Chairman Mao Zedong. No? During this epoch, they were able to liberate themselves from the clutches of imperialism, from the clutches of warlordism. China can never become or become a nation under 100 years of humiliation, as they call it, which a large part is being dominated by imperial powers at the turn of the century and being divided by huge, powerful, ruthless warlords. Their political revolution ended that significantly. For the warlords, either you reform or get destroyed. You can never start thinking of becoming a nation while you are divided by warlords. No? That is why we have a very imperfect nation, if you can call it a nation, because of this fragmentation on the local level. China was able to fix that through a political revolution. But their great leap forward, their economic revolution, was lacking. And that is where the second epoch came into play in 1978 after the Party Congress. It is an economic rejuvenation, an opening up of China to the world. But this is not a total opening up. While they accepted market economy, the free market, it coexisted with state planning. It is not solely market. But they said that to be rich is acceptable. To be rich is glorious. we have to develop our productive forces. That was the political or the economic revolution led by Chairman Deng Xiaoping. That is one of our problems as a nation. We have never really developed our productive forces. We have never had an elite like in the US or in Europe, which became modernizing, which think that their economic wealth should be tied up with the development of the country, or else their wealth will be in a crisis mode. That's why the elites in Europe and in the United States and Canada try to create a social pact with civil society to develop an open system with inclusive growth. Historically, we have failed that in developing our industry, our manufacturing, our agriculture to a level beyond carpetbagging. China was able to do that and was able to transform themselves from a poor country into a developed country in so short a span of time, 30 years, 3 decades. But even that is not enough. The third epoch is the present epoch of President Xi Jinping. It's good that we have developed. We have lifted 500 million people out of poverty. We have developed our technology. We are now the second biggest economy in the world, on our way to being the first. But that is not enough. Even if we have developed our wealth, there are still enclaves of poverty and inequality. There are still inefficiency, corruption. So the Xi Jinping epoch started with a massive anti-corruption movement, where more than 4 million government officials, even party members, were put in prison for corruption. Even those whom, from our perspective, would appear untouchable, were charged with corruption. That is very important, because in a country like ours, leaders are very proud of being discovered to be corrupt. That is our difference. In China, they fear for their lives. In the Philippines, we flaunt it like medals. Corruption. But the second wave, which is starting in the past few years, especially in this party Congress, is common prosperity. We have to bridge inequality between the North and the South, the East and the West, the urban and the rural, the over-rich with the not-so-rich. It is a very painstaking transition. It's like tearing large chunks of your flesh, but it has to be done. I think that was the essence of the last party Congress from my vantage point. So, we are here now. China, like us, has a lot of problems. But the difference is not about having the same problems. Inflation, currency devaluation, corruption. It's how to handle these problems, which is the difference. Something which we can learn dialectically from the Chinese. So this is where we are now. Let us not waste those lessons. We are not saying that China is perfect. Of course it's not. Even they will claim it. But let us learn from the negative as well as from the positive. From the thesis and the antithesis to create a synthesis. One of the more important roles of China now is underrated, understated. Several months ago, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres, a good friend of mine from our old days in the Socialist International. He is also a socialist, former Prime Minister of Portugal. What did he say several months ago? We are on the verge of a nuclear Armageddon. What did US President Biden said several months ago? We are on the verge of a nuclear Armageddon. Two of the most important leaders in the world almost simultaneously said that we are on the verge of a nuclear Armageddon. One of the more important roles China can do in this threat of global annihilation is to help negotiate with the superpowers to try to move backwards from the edge. Not too many can do that. Not too many countries will Russia listen to. China can. So, while discussing all these developments, we have to emphasize that dialectically, China has an important role, especially in this time, in this threat of nuclear Armageddon. We cannot underestimate that importance. That is a role which, unfortunately, or fortunately, only China can play to move us away from the edge.
Awarded as most respected professor there for several consecutive years. He is also 25 years of. He also has 25 years of journalism experience. Has been writing investigative journalism, opinion columns. He has also been editor and co-author of 16 books on politics, electoral reforms, governance, corruption, and other issues, especially foreign policy, national security also. Let us welcome for his reaction, Professor Bobby M. Tuason from Bicol Region. Via Zoom.
To His Excellency, the good Ambassador Huang, also to Wilson and my two colleagues in the and good morning to our media friends. I have observed, watched, and listened to the proceedings of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China over the past several days whenever I had the time. So I thought I was able to come up with some preliminary observations centering on the learning lessons from that historic and National Congress, which is held every 5 years. Let me also add beforehand that I have traveled to China several times already. I have made several trips across China. I have seen the massive modernization, the infrastructure building, the ongoing ecological civilization in China. But what struck me very much is the fact that whenever I go to any of China's villages or counties, there is always a party headquarters of the Communist Party of China that is hosted by the party chief of that village. And so that is a very striking and remarkable image of a country that is led by a Communist Party of China and that continues to gain high trust from the Chinese people over the past several years, especially under the leadership of General Secretary and President Xi Jinping, who was also the chairman of the Central Military Commission. Next slide, please, Clarissa. Okay, so let me just start off by saying that the recent National Congress of the CPC is highly significant in the midst of the whole world, or most parts of the world still reeling from the adverse impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also in the midst of increasing threat of global recession that is imminent. And some economic experts say it will happen next year, alongside the outbreak of major conflicts and tensions across the world, particularly in Europe, in the Ukraine war. The lessons that I would like to start with preliminarily are the following. I have seen how China has achieved a moderately prosperous society and is set to become the world's largest economy in a few years. Now, the thrust of the CPC is toward high quality development after 40 years of quantitative leaps in industrialization, manufacturing, modernization and technology. Now it is about time that, having achieved that kind of level of modernization, China is now geared toward a high quality development, so that by 1949, or the centenary of the Chinese independence, China would have already achieved a modern socialist society. That means a society that has more or less achieved equality in many aspects of life, like income, the absence of any kind of oppressive conditions. Probably there will still be class structures in China, but all these will be reformed, and the centenary will signal the start of the uh, decades toward which China will become a communist society. Of course, that is difficult to forecast. When that will be, that will be up to the leadership of the CPC. Probably 50 years thereafter or 100 years thereafter, who knows? But I am positive that uh, knowing China and the trends that have been achieved, and the purposefulness of developing a socialist society, I know that China will be able to reach that apex of its civilization, which can then be called a communist society. Today, China is also politically and socially stable. That is founded on a strong and highly trusted Communist Party of China leadership. It is highly trusted because of the past 30 years of leadership of the CPC. China has been able to lift 850 million people out of poverty in 40 years. And this number contributes three-fourth reduction of the global poverty. This achievement provides a strong foundation for social equality in all aspects. Therefore, a strong and stable China is good for the world. A strong and stable China is good for the world. Today, almost 140 countries have China as their largest trading partner, including the Philippines, of course. And then 150 countries are now linked with China under the Belt and Road Initiative, where the connectivity is ongoing, characterized by the building of infrastructures, highways, expressways, and other economic activities. And then you have the BRICS, or the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa economic bloc, which is gaining success, and the result of which it continues to draw new members or new applicants like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other countries. China has therefore has developed a rising global influence, and it is using this, or it is on this anchor that China supports the reform of the international system toward a multipolar system where all nations are equal, where the major countries are equal, where there is no global hegemon, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. Let me quote a very interesting quotation from General Secretary Xi Jinping, which says, just as China cannot develop in isolation from the world needs China for its development. I completely agree with this statement from the good General Secretary. In fact, the development of China, the modernization and opening of China for the past 40 years has been achieved by integrating China with the global system. But it has also shown that as China develops, or as China has risen to become a regional and a global power in the economy, it has uh, contributed a lot to the development of many countries, especially in Africa, some parts of the Middle East, many parts of Asia, some parts of Latin America, to be able to say that without China, the development of these countries would have been an uphill battle. I quote another from Zhang Xingquan, the director of the Policy Research Office of the CPC Central Committee, who says, common prosperity is an essential requirement of socialism and a key feature of Chinese-style modernization. It reflects the CPC's commitment to a people-centered development. Only socialism has the conditions and ability to achieve common prosperity for all, while capitalism, which has been championed by the West over the past 200 years, seeks maximum interest for capital and therefore cannot attain real uh, common prosperity. I dare say that Western capitalism is on the way out. Socialism in China is on the rise. And I think this is a major lesson that should be learned from many countries. If countries want to achieve common prosperity and equalize opportunities like jobs, welfare, and services, then socialism, well, probably some lessons from socialism or aspects of socialism can be adopted. So long as governments in those countries develop and build their development goals as people-centered development. One cannot achieve common prosperity and one cannot lift people out of poverty without defining and being and determined to usher in a people-centered development. It is like what China says: the people are the sovereign power of the China, and all the people participate in government through their villages, counties, and CPC chapters at all levels, from the grassroots to the provincial and regional level, ensuring that development can be achieved not necessarily coming from the above, from the CPC, but coming from below, allowing the people to participate actively in the development. And this is the reason why this kind of what Xi Jinping now calls the whole process democracy is the reason why common prosperity has been achieved through the people-centered development in China. That is another lesson that I would like to mention. Next slide, Clarissa. However, uh, China faces current challenges. One of the most immediate challenges is the American threat, which was started by Donald Trump years ago to economically decouple China by depriving China, for instance, of the computer chips that are much needed by China for its technological and computer uh, development. So that's in the economic sphere. On the political and military sphere, is the U.S. containment strategy on China with several bases encircling the mainland. And I think many of us are already familiar with this. Many of the bases are based in the Western Pacific, in some parts of the South China Sea. And this containment strategy has been um, propped up by the new Indo-Pacific strategy of the U.S. Through the organization of the AUKUS, or the Australia, UK, US alliance, and the Quad alliance that also includes Japan and India. But such attempts are bound to fail. Such attempts are bound to fail as more and more countries oppose it, and as more and more countries would rather concentrate and preoccupy themselves with economic development, because they know, many countries are aware, that if you allow yourself to be gobbled up, to become vulnerable to security challenges led by the US, then that will uh, become a big impediment to your own economic development. Last slide, Clarissa. Next slide, please. So how should the Philippines calibrate its foreign policy now, after the learning lessons from the CPC's 20th National Congress, and of course, after years of diplomatic economic relations with China? These are my own preliminary proposals. First, it is better to relate more with China than rely on the US solely through an onerous security alliance, because we know that all the treaties and the alliance treaties that have been forged with the US have been onerous, and that they are one-sided, and that they benefit only the US and pose, on the other hand, problems, risks, and challenges to the Philippines. So these are very onerous, and they foretell uh, uh, many problems for the Philippines. Number two, if the Philippines or the Philippine government now really wants to forge an independent foreign policy, it should be based on economic priorities rather than be dictated by security requirements. We relate with the rest of the world to, well, to borrow the statement from BBM, although it is not original, we are friends to many and enemies to none. That's not original, actually. But that kind of relationship should be based on economic priorities, on our domestic economic environment. Number three, we should assert our right to economic growth under a peaceful environment rather than an environment that is riddled with military tensions and threats and the presence of foreign military forces surrounding the Philippines. And lastly, we should maximize the use of bilateral dialogue mechanisms established with China in resolving our bilateral issues. Is there another slide? Final slide, Clarissa? Okay, so that ends my short presentation. And thank you everyone for listening. And thank you also to Wilson.
We'd like to request Mr. Lucio Blanco Pitlo III, Research Fellow of the Asia Pacific Pathways to Progress Foundation, also member of the Board of Directors of the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies, or PACS. He was lecturer at Ateneo de Manila University, also at De La Salle University, and many others. His commentaries and analysis have been published internationally also. Let us welcome. Sorry, we'd like to request a short analysis because the media are very eager for questions right after. Mr. Lucio Blanco Pitlo III, thank you for your reaction.
Thank you again, Mr. Wilson Lee Flores, for inviting me to join this panel with distinguished Ambassador Huang Xilian and Secretary Llamas, Professor Bobby Tuason joining us online. So I'll try to make my reaction short. I have a short presentation. So what I'm gonna do is to touch on a few points that were already mentioned earlier. So the outline of my presentation will start with a few of China's achievements in recent years that were also mentioned in the last Party Congress, and then look at China's experience and lessons that it can share to the world. Then look at the prospects for China's foreign policy going forward after the 20th Party Congress. And I think that neighborhood diplomacy will get a lot of importance. And then, of course, China's relations with its neighbors, especially with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, with which the Philippines is part of. And then finally end it with a few points on Philippines-China relations going forward. So these are just some of China's achievements that are major and will have a lot of bearing on initiatives that China is rolling out, that it had rolled out a few years ago, and that it would continue to sustain in the next 5 years under the leadership of President Xi Jinping. So, as mentioned, China is already the world's largest trading nation, biggest trading partner for over 140 countries, world's largest manufacturing country, the country that holds the world's largest foreign exchange reserves. And recently, of course, China also emerged as the world's largest bilateral ODA creditor and also a major destination of foreign investment and also increasingly an important outbound investor. So these are some of the experience of China in its years of reform and opening up that, of course, have a lot of importance for developing countries, including the Philippines. So poverty reduction has been mentioned. So in 2 generations' time, China was able to uplift 800 million people out of poverty. almost 8 times the size of the Philippines population today. And in the last 8 years, China was able to uplift 100 million people out of poverty, most of them from the rural areas. So this has a lot of bearing for countries in the global south. So China was able to eliminate poverty, absolute poverty that is, ahead of the 2030 UN Sustainable Development Goal agenda. And that achievement, China is, of course, now trying to share to the world through the Global Development Initiative, which I'll touch a bit later. So China was able to achieve its first major centenary goal, which is to build a moderately prosperous society. And eradicating poverty is at the heart of that. Infrastructure, of course, in one generation, in 20 years' time, from having no high-speed railways to now possessing the world's most extensive, most modern high-speed railways in the world. Not to mention expressways, biggest ports and busiest ports, including the one in Shanghai. Agriculture is also a major achievement made by China, feeding 1.04 billion people. Ensuring food security for that huge population is in itself already a big achievement for the world, not only for China as a country. And China, of course, reached the world's largest grain output. So that ability to use its land resources, water resources to feed its people. So I think those things they can share to the world. Human capital development. So China being the world's largest country, also rolling out the world's largest education, social security, and also healthcare system. So they covered 95% of their population with basic medical insurance. In terms of housing, they have done a lot also. And I think this is very important. Technical, vocational, skills education. And the strong linkage between education and industry. I think a lot of developing countries should take a page from how China did its massive and rapid economic development, and the education and the industry working hand in hand has a huge role in that. In terms of innovation, China is now the world's second largest spender in terms of research and development. And they're really catching up a lot. And they have invested a lot in their people. Now they possess the world's largest number of R&D people. And of course, this has a lot of bearing on next generation technologies, cutting edge technologies, fourth industrial revolution. And lastly, I think the fight against corruption, which has been mentioned. So China is doing a lot in terms of making sure, sending a strong message to its people and to the world that no tigers, no flies, no foxes would be tolerated. I think for countries that are serious in fighting corruption, I think China can offer plenty, can probably lend its playbook. So the prospects for China's foreign policy initiatives. So I think 3 key initiatives will have a lot of importance in the next 5 years. BBS, Belt and Road Initiative, the BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So 3 key trends. Continuity. So with the third term of President Xi Jinping, Belt and Road Initiative, which had been launched in 2013, already 9 years, and it's still going strong, growing in terms of number of countries joining, number of projects being rolled out even during the pandemic. And I think one major contribution of China to climate change mitigation and also to transition the energy usage of countries, especially in the developing world, away from hydrocarbons, especially heavily polluting oil, will be to look at more efficient, more greener source of energy. So we will have hydro power, solar and wind, of which China is the largest producer of these kinds of energies. And these are all initiatives that China can share to the world. By mass producing these technologies, they were able to reduce the cost and make it more affordable to more countries the world over. So there are 2 initiatives that are, of course, recent. And I think the third term of President Xi Jinping, he would have the chance to articulate more clearly what is the Global Development Initiative what is the Global Security Initiative and China's determination to provide not only economic goods, but also security goods to the world. Of course, there will be issues raised, there will be suspicions that would be raised, but I think the onus is on China to really show to the world what it means when it's like providing more to the world commensurate to its increasing capacity. And lastly, of course, the expansion of organizations of which China has a very foundational role and has a very outsized role, very important role. So I mentioned BRICS and, of course, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Of course, a point has to be made about the challenges in major country relations. Of course, the US-China competition, which will regrettably define the future of international relations in the next few years. So as relations between major powers become more intense, they are under stress, I think neighborhood or peripheral diplomacy will be very important for China. So Belt and Road Initiative, I mentioned, the BRICS. In last May, BRICS held a consultation, and several countries, including the Philippines' neighbors, Indonesia and Thailand, took part in that consultation. So BRICS is growing, and with the growth of BRICS, of course, more voice for emerging economies, more opportunities for developing countries to have a say in charting the future of global economic architecture. And I think that's good for China, that's good for the world. Shanghai Cooperation Organization started largely, if not exclusively, as a security-focused organization. Eventually, they ventured into economics and then also into cultural cooperation. And this grouping, before it was just China, Russia, 5 Central Asian republics. Now you have India and Pakistan on it. Of course, India and Pakistan are neighbors. They have disputes, but they are on board. And of course, recently, last month, when China hosted the BRICS summit and President Xi hosted the virtual leader summit, Iran was also admitted. So the organization is growing. We have observers and dialogue partners, including fellow Southeast Asian country Cambodia, also a dialogue partner of SCO. And I think this regional grouping is expected to grow. So I mentioned about the 2 new initiatives, which we hope to hear more from China, especially from President Xi Jinping in the next 5 years. So how does it bear on ASEAN-China relations? So the economic ties between the two sides is expected to grow and deepen. So China will largely turn to emerging economies, especially Southeast Asia, which have among the world's fastest growing economies. And of course, there are issues that will accelerate the process of China-ASEAN integration. And of course, several factors will also increase this linkage between China and ASEAN, one of which is, of course, the entry into force of the RCEP early this year, the growing physical connectivity. Railways, for instance, the China-Laos Railway recently inaugurated and already opened. So there would be growing infrastructure, physical connectivity between China and that of Southeast Asia. Of course, the Hainan Free Trade Port, expected to have a separate customs zone in 2025 and becoming the world's largest free trade port expected by 2035. So how will it impact on Philippines-China relations? So in 2018, during the visit of President Xi to Manila, both sides, Philippines and China, signed an MOU on Belt and Road cooperation. So there's already a platform for both sides to expand cooperation. We can build on that existing platform. And of course, senior leaders from China already paid a visit to President Marcos early in his administration, 3 of them. Of course, State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and of course, Vice President Wang Xilian, and most recently, Minister of the Communist Party of China, International Department, Liu Qianchao. I'm sorry about my pronunciation. So there's a need to expand economic engagement between the two sides. So whether it's the build of the previous Duterte administration to the new build better more of the Marcos administration, I think the convergence, the synergy between China's Belt and Road and the Philippines' connectivity roadmap is very clear. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of taking that productive aspect of the relations forward. Greater market access for Philippine agricultural exports. This is very important. And of course, President Marcos highlighted it by no less than serving as the concurrent Secretary of Agriculture. So food security, very important for the country, very important for the leadership. Now, there are about 10.66 million people in the Philippines working in the farm. And the share of agriculture to the country's GDP is around 10%, 9.6. The impact on rural poverty alleviation is very important. Mindanao, for instance, the country's fruit basket, leading exporter of tropical agricultural fruits to countries like China and Japan. Let me cite a few numbers. So people will understand that these are not, abstractions. There are over 240,000 people in the Davao region alone, in the banana industry. And our largest export market for that fruit is China. For the last 30 years, it has been Japan. And of course, in recent years, that has changed. So it really tells you the growing importance of China, one as a commodities importer, big market, and also investor in modernizing Philippine agriculture, and at the same time, a source of agricultural inputs, fertilizers, for instance. Of course, Ambassador Huang, we thank you for facilitating the donation of, I think, 4 million worth of fertilizers in recent months. Very important as the prices of wheat, prices of food, fertilizers, and crude energy from the global market become more increased, the price and the supplies becoming more constrained. So I think the reopening of the Chinese tourist market is also very, very important. A lot of countries are already preparing for it. Of course, China right now is implementing the dynamic zero COVID policy, but we don't know when it will change. Surely it will be changed. China will not lock itself forever. So eventually, the market will be opened up. The question is, are we preparing for that? Our other neighbors in Southeast Asia, Thailand, for instance, have long been able to attract millions of Chinese tourists yearly to flock to their holiday destinations. And of course, in recent years, we have tried to invest more in tourism-related infrastructure. We can do more. There's a lot of space for that. I think it's also important that President Marcos highlighted the value of expanding levels of interaction between the two countries. It should not be confined alone to official levels. Not only government to government, not only business to business, but also academic, think tank, media exchanges, people to people. So this will make sure that there will be multiple levels of interaction between the two countries. And finally, of course, we have disputes. So it's very important that the disputes, maritime issues between the Philippines and China will be handled well. The previous administration, despite of the challenges, had done a lot in terms of ensuring that the disputes will not become a crisis that will affect overall relations. So the bilateral consultative mechanism, which was established by the previous Duterte administration, we still hadn't heard about the current Manila administration excuse me, on how it would proceed with managing this irritant in the relations between two sides. But I hope that diplomats like, of course, Ambassador Huang, the Filipino counterpart has still to be nominated, but hopefully soon. So we hope that this aspect of the relations will not affect the broader, the comprehensive relations between the two countries. I will end there. Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Wilson, Ambassador Huang, Secretary Llamas, Professor Babituasa.
We have some questions already lined up for Ambassador. We have not too much time, but we want to request maybe, Ambassador, apologies, maybe short answers and short questions also from our media friends. First, Ambassador, thank you. We have someone listening He is not only columnist of the Manila Times newspaper, he is former Secretary of Presidential Management Staff and former Chairman of the Civil Service Commission. Among his very distinguished credentials, former Secretary Rick Saludo is listening to you. He has several questions. Secretary Rick Saludo's first question, Ambassador, can China please add one more area of cooperation with the Philippines? Research and development, especially R&D in agriculture, health, disaster readiness, response, and energy. From Secretary Rick Saludo.
Thank you, former Secretary Saludo, for your question. Yeah, I will try to make my answer brief.
Yes.
Yes, we have initially identified 4 key areas of cooperation, but our cooperation will not be limited to the 4 areas, of course. R&D, research and development, China has been one of the leading players in R&D. And of course, we will be more than happy to develop cooperation with the country so that we can work hand in hand in the future. And the other areas that you have mentioned, including health and some other areas, of course, they are all, those areas that we are paying close attention to. We will, try to be inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Secretary Saludo has 3 more questions. Request for a short answer. Thank you for your brief answer, Ambassador. Secretary Saludo's next question, how will the incoming CPC leadership in China affect policies and actions towards the West and also towards ASEAN region, especially with regard to security issues in the Asia-Pacific region?
Thank you. I think that's General Secretary Xi Jinping elaborated the foreign policy of CPC in the report. I refer you to the very informative paragraphs on the foreign policy. What I want to emphasize that we will continue to open our door to the world even bigger. And as we said that in the future, when we pursue our modernization, China will continue to lead the world, and the world also needs China. So I think we need to continue to develop friendly relations with all countries who are willing to develop friendly and mutually beneficial cooperation with China. And as for our neighborhood, ASEAN has been always high on our agenda in our overall diplomacy. And we have always played high ASEAN on our diplomatic agenda. So ASEAN has become the largest trading partner of China in the past few years. And we believe it will continue to be the largest trading partner and also the partner for economic cooperation, for innovation, for that green economy, for that kind of new information construction, all other fields in the future. So we look forward to working closely with ASEAN, and there is a forthcoming China-ASEAN summit pending next month, and we believe that our 2 leaders will work together to contribute to an even stronger, even more substantive China-ASEAN relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. There's a next question here from Secretary Saludo and also from Professor Bobby Tuason. They have similar question here. I think 5 journalists also have similar questions. Secretary Rick Saludo said, how will China respond to the full implementation of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or the so-called EDCA, including the use of 5 Philippine military bases by U.S. forces? Professor Bobby Tuason has a related question. So I will just mention the question again from Professor Bobby Tuason. USA plans to build new bases in the South China Sea. What are your reaction to these two questions by Secretary Saludo and Professor Bobby Tuason?
Thank you.
Microphone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my very brief answer to the first question is that, China has no objection to Philippines to develop its normal relationship with any country in the world. Of course, we don't hope that your relationship with any country in the world will be directed against China. Second is that you touch upon South China's issue. I was very impressed when President Marcos talked about the Filipino way in handling differences during his first sauna, because it's very similar to the Chinese view and Chinese position on handling differences. That is, that's how we should, share the differences to seek common developments if we can not solve the differences. And we should try to create a good environment for us to handle the differences. And I believe that we should also, seek to settle and manage our differences through direct, friendly consultations and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our friend from Philippine Daily Inquirer, Associate Publisher, Miss Juliet Habeliana, she's here. Her question is, in line with China's commitment to continue closer economic ties with the Philippines, is China open to renegotiating the 3 major railway projects that were scrapped during the last days of the Duterte administration? From Philippine Daily Inquirer, Associate Publisher, Ms. Juliet Habeliana.
Thank you for this very good question. During the last administration, we have, that initiated about nearly 40 government-to-government cooperation projects. Among them, most of them are infrastructure projects. And we have been, working very hard on this. We have completed some of the projects, and some of the projects are still in progress, and some of them are still under, that kind of negotiation. So, as I said, that infrastructure is one of the key areas of cooperation, and we are, ready to have further communication with new administration to, understand their, plan for the build better and more, so that we can, match each other, our, strategy and program. And I believe that Philippines need to accelerate your infrastructure program. We have, worked very closely with our neighborhoods on railway. You can see that's Laos, a country of Laos PDR, the country of 7 million people, with the support and cooperation from China. In 5 years' time, they have already completed the railway, stretching from Laos capital to the city of Kunming of China, about 1,400 kilometers. And as for Indonesia, in the past 5-6 years, we have initiated our projects of the high-speed train, between Bandung and Jakarta. And this project has been going on very well. It will become the first high-speed train in Southeast Asia with a speed of 350 kilometers per hour. And it is going to be completed very soon and become operational. I think that there are some implications for the Philippines. We do believe that we can work together for a better future of your infrastructure development in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question, inquirer. Is there a possible forthcoming visit of newly re-elected President Xi Jinping to the Philippines? And if yes, when would the most opportune time be? From Ms. Juliet Abellana, Philippine Daily Inquirer.
Thank you. This is a top question. You know, the diplomacy between our two heads of states, or the interaction between our two heads of states, have been playing a vital role in leading and in guiding our relationship. The China side has been, attaching great importance to high-level exchanges and interaction with the Philippines. And as you mentioned just now, that at the beginning of this administration, the Chinese President Xi Jinping dispatched his senior representative, Special Representative Vice President Huang Xilian, to attend an inauguration ceremony and to visit the Philippines, followed by the visit of our State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and also our Minister Liu Jianchao. So I think all these kind of visits have, of course, made a great contribution to, familiarizing with this new administration for, planning for our future cooperation. So we look forward to more, high-level interaction, especially the interaction between our two presidents, either bilaterally or in regional, international, occasion. So we believe our guidance will continue to play a very crucial role for our future cooperation of the bilateral relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's another in Daily Inquirer, journalist Mr. Alden Monson. This is a little bit controversial, but I think Ambassador is okay too. It's about POGOs. What are your, what's the latest on the POGO and the current situation there? What are your recommendations for the Philippines and the new administration about the controversial POGO? And how can the government of China help the Philippines fix this POGO situation? This is from Mr. Alden Monson. I abbreviated the question to make it shorter.
Thank you. I think a lot of countries, they have drawn on the lessons of POGO, the kind of negative impacts of POGO on the economic and social development, and totally banned, comprehensively banned POGO industry. China is just one of them who has totally, comprehensively banned POGO. POGO is illegal for any Chinese citizens, not only at home, but also overseas. Any Chinese citizen who engage in POGO will be, it is illegal for any Chinese nationals, even traveling overseas, to engage in POGO industry. So we believe that the POGO industry not only has brought, a lot of harm, a lot of, negative impacts on China, but also on the Philippine Pacific. And of course, it will have also negative impacts on the bilateral relations, since actually China is a victim of POGO. And we have been working closely with the Philippine government, Philippine agencies concerned, to crack down on illegal POGO. And we hope that, the harms of the POGO, the negative impacts of POGO will be fully realized by people and by authorities in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. This is actually a question also from Zoom via Facebook from Mr. James Peña Florida Amparo. Actually, he's saying, we would like to thank Ambassador Huang Xilian for directly opening up our Philippine durian fruits exports to China, because before we had to go through Malaysia and Thailand to export to China. Now the Philippines has direct access and tremendously helping our farmers. Hope you can share any more future good news. From James Peña, Florida Amparo. Is this true? I had no idea that you had help with durian. Mr. Pitlo also said China donated fertilizer. Not many are aware of that.
Yes, as I said, that China has become now the largest importer of Philippine agricultural products. And in the past few years, we have imported a lot of bananas, avocado, and some other fruits from the Philippines, which have enriched the food at the table of the Chinese people. We are appreciated for that. And we know that Philippines is an important agricultural, that's producer, and quite a lot of tropical fruits, are liked by the Chinese people, will become popular in Chinese market. So we are working together with your administration to allow more Philippine tropical fruits to be imported to China. I think that next one could be durian. We are importing durian from some other ASEAN countries, but we do feel that the durian in the Philippines are as delicious, if not more delicious. It will become popular in China. So we are doing the work of assessment, on your durian production and durian quality. Once our two sides sign some protocol on this, then it will become reality that Chinese people can eat durian from this country. Of course, that some other tropical fruits will be lining up, including agricultural, produces. So we hope that we will have more and more, agricultural products in Chinese markets. And as I said, that we advise that you take full advantage of the Shanghai Import Expo to be held sometime later this year. So that's, there will be more contracts to be signed by business, community between our two countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question. There's a question here from Manila Bulletin journalist, Miss Bernie Makilat, and also two more other journalists. Ambassador Huang, can you please share how much Philippine fruits China is planning to import this year, or any more updates on this? What is the estimate, how much Philippine fruits?
Maybe I need to pose question to him or to her first. How much production can you provide to Chinese market?
Good, very good answer. So maybe Mr. Lim and Mr. Kwa here should go into fruit business aside from rice. And also Mr. Pedro. Thank you. There's another question here from 5 different journalists. One is Mr. Wesley Chua of Chinese Commercial News, also Professor Bobby Tuasan and others. They're asking what are updates about the invitation of China to President Bongbong Marcos to visit China. If there are any updates on this, or
yes, as I said, that we look forward to more, high-level exchange between our two head of states, and we are working on this. And of course, if there is any progress, we will share with you. Thank you.
There's a follow-up. What are our new president, Bongbong Marcos, and his first lady, because the first lady, Lisa Araneta Marcos, hosted a separate special lunch for you and your embassy diplomats. What are your personal impressions of both of them? Since before the election, you also invited President BBM to your embassy. What are your impressions of both?
Impression. Handsome, beautiful, graceful, and warm. You know, as you know, that's Marcos family has long history of friendship with China. It was the Marcos family who pioneered our relationship, leading to the establishment of our bilateral relationship. So we will never forget their contribution to this relationship. As a Chinese proverb goes, that's, you know, while you drink the water, never forget the one who dig the well. And now President Marcos is leading this country. We look forward to working with him to, you know, that's promote our friendship, long-lasting friendship, and our mutually beneficial cooperation. As President Marcos has put it, that he look forward to our relationship to shift to higher gear in the next few years. I think that's also the expectation of the Chinese side. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Ms. Julia Tabellana. How can the Chinese government help improve the situation of Filipino fishermen in the disputed areas, if any?
I'm happy to see that fishermen from both countries have been fishing at the sea peacefully, and actually they have been getting along, you know, that's peacefully. And of course, while we are managing differences, we are also working to promote maritime cooperation, you know, between our two countries. We believe that this kind of maritime cooperation between our two countries will benefit fishermen in the future. We look forward to that.
Thank you. Maybe one last question from several journalists. What places in the Philippines have you visited for tourism, and what are prospects of opening up of China travel? Because I think the whole of Asia and the world have missed the China tourists in the last 2-3 years. What places have you been to that you love the most in the Philippines? Maybe top 3 Philippine tourist places you've been, Ambassador.
You know,
And why?
I've been traveling across Luzon. I've been traveling to Mindanao. I've been traveling to you know, Visayas.
Have you been to Boracay? Or Palawan yet? Not yet.
Not yet.
You're always working.
Yeah, that because of pandemic, I think
Yes.
I've been prevented from traveling to many places. But I think that now is a good time to travel.
Yes.
So I look forward to travel to more places, and I will tell you which is my favorite in the future. And yes.
Thank you very much.
And-
Good question. People are asking about joint exploration and development of the sea. These are 5 different questions. One of these is from Angie Chen of Central News Agency of Taiwan, and other journalists asking if there are any updates, and is the 60-40 offer of China still the same offer?
You know, we have been negotiating on the common development of oil and gas according to the memorandum of understanding signed between our two governments in 2018. We have made positive and significant progress, but we are yet to, you know, conclude it for the benefits of our two peoples. And we do believe that our cooperation in oil and gas will help meet the need of our two countries of energy, and will also promote the kind of positive interaction between our two sides in the sea. So we have been working on that, and we appreciate that President Marcos and Secretary Manolo both, made it public that they are open to the resumption of negotiation after the new administration took office on oil gas common development. We are ready to work with this administration. We hope that we will find some way out to handle the remaining differences so that we could begin that kind of oil and gas common development in an early date so that it can benefit our people and our two countries as early as possible. Thank you.
Question pala, Ms. Juliet Habeliana of Inquirer would like to request, Ambassador, can you personally clarify your statement to the Senate President Zubiri about China putting the Philippines on a tourism blacklist because of the POGOs? Thank you very much from Ms. Juliet Habeliana here in Associate.
Yes, I think that I had a warm, constructive discussion with Senate President Zubiri some weeks ago, and he's a nice man. We had a good discussion. We have shared a lot in common, and including our views on POGOs. And I think that my spokesperson has already, issued a statement on our position on the POGO, and I pay my high salute to, that's Senate President Zubiri. Thank you.
To request short closing statements from the reactors and then from the ambassador. Start first with Secretary Llamas. A short closing statement about the session. Thank you very much for the very frank, enlightening answers of Ambassador. Secretary Llamas, for your closing statement.
Well, I would just like to I cannot emphasize it enough about the things we can learn from China on three aspects: anti-corruption. Even the sister, Amy Marcos, is talking about massive corruption inside the Department of Agriculture, where his brother, the president, at present heads that portfolio. Second is the question of agriculture. I think we can learn a lot from China, especially in research and development, especially now that even the NEDA chair, Balisacan, says that we are in the middle of a food and agriculture crisis. And lastly, education. The World Bank said several months ago that out of 80 countries they studied, the Philippines is the 79th in terms of learning poverty. We are now one of the highest in terms of learning poverty, especially for illiteracy in a lot of our young people. And in the past, that was our comparative advantage. I think in the medium term, that will be our curse. These three things, we can learn a lot from China. I would like to emphasize that. Thank you.
Bobby Tuason from Bicol, Legazpi City, to give us a short closing statement.
Yes, thank you very much, Wilson. I think I have already said what I wanted to say, but I'd like to thank most especially the good Ambassador Huang, for gracing the occasion, I listened to him very intently on his presentation. I learned a lot from that presentation. I also would like to thank our most energetic and most reliable host of the Pandesal Forum, Wilson Flores, for bringing in the Chinese ambassador to us for this important conversation, and for previously also organizing a similar forum on international issues. That's why I suggested to Wilson to rename Kamuning Bakery Cafe into a Kamuning Global Cafe because of this innovative contribution. Thank you very much, Wilson.
So we'd like to invite Mr. Lucio Pitlo III for his short closing statement, and then the ambassador later.
Thank you again, Mr. Wilson Lee Flores, for inviting me, Ambassador Huang, Secretary Llamas, Professor Tuason. Always a pleasure to be here. Probably I'll just share some few numbers regarding the Philippine fruit exports to China. So 490 million worth of bananas we exported last year, despite of the pandemic. On the average from 2019 to 2021, we have been exporting 100 million worth of pineapples to China. So these numbers, of course, benefit a lot of people. So if we look at the people being employed in agriculture, especially in rural traditional backwaters of the Philippines, Mindanao, Davao region, benefited a lot from the greater market opening of China. And I think there's a lot of scope for other fruits, aside from bananas, pineapples, durians, avocados. We are the only Asian country to export avocados, has avocados to China. And I think other fruits are also probably in the lineup. Mangoes, Ilocos region, of course the home region of the president, is the largest grower of mangoes. And Ilocos Norte is the largest producer of dragon fruit. So I think there's a lot of scope for cooperation between both sides in terms of China opening up more market spaces for Philippine agricultural exports. The Philippines should maximize taking part in international exports of China. Of course, when relations go south, easily substitutable agricultural goods may suffer from political disruptions. So I think it's incumbent on both sides to really invest in making sure that relations will be managed well, so that overall relations, including in economics, agriculture, will not be affected. Of course, Dr. Henry Lim Bonlyong is here, the champion of Philippine rice, Philippine agriculture. Phil Scott, of course, China and Philippines cooperated in setting up this institute that is helping modernize and put more R&D, science and technology in the cultivation and expansion of rice in the Philippines. I think more areas in the Philippines need to have access to these technologies going forward. So, infrastructure. I think, of course, when leadership changes, sometimes some priorities also changes. Some projects get more priority over the others. But I think China had demonstrated in different projects in different countries. Say, for instance, the East Coast Railing Project of Malaysia. Started with former Prime Minister Najib Razak. Up until now, the project, despite of the political dynamics in Malaysia, the project is still moving on. And I think the expectation is that by 2026 or 2027, this will be completed. Of course, the Jakarta-Bandung Railway in Indonesia, of course, also being funded. Chinese enterprises helping build this. Most likely, this will be opened, inaugurated next year, as Indonesia holds the rotating chairmanship of ASEAN. So I think this goes to show that despite of the leadership changes, as long as there is interest and willingness on both sides to negotiate, whether it's interest rates, whether it's other provisions, whether it's more local content on labor or supplies, I think these issues can be discussed as long as both sides are really intent in forging a deal. So infrastructure, very important for the Philippines. And I think, of course, other partners, Japan is helping us build the subway. the North-South Commuter Railway. So I think there's a lot of scope for us to work with as many partners in China with the 3 railway projects. I think the Philippines will be in better hands before, hopefully, President Marcos steps down in 2028. The expectation is that if we start early, if we start the 3 railway projects the soonest time possible, by 2028, if not completed, at least the 3 railway projects will advance to a stage where they would have substantial completion, and that the next administration will try to finish it. I think it's very important for us to also have a leveled expectations. Big ticket projects in the Philippines rarely gets completed under a single administration. I think Secretary Llamas can attest to that. So it's very important for us to have the patience, of course, play the long game, and of course there will be cost overruns, there will be issues in the implementation. But again, both sides should really sit down and talk about the differences. So education, very important. The industry and education linkage in China, I think it's a model for other countries, making sure that people who finish programs will have employment, and that the industry, the economy of the country will be able to provide opportunities for them. So I think these are just some of the few lessons that China in the last 40 or so years, they were able to do. We can actually reduce our learning curve. Many developing countries won't have to do trial and error because China had provided a lot of lessons for the world. Of course, they made mistakes and they paid a lot for those mistakes, but at the same time, they made a lot of progress. And I think it's very important for us to distill which lessons from China's experience can have value for us. Thank you again.
Last but not the least, we'd like to request Ambassador Huang Xilian to give his closing statement.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the media friends and all friends attending this event for your attention and for your patience, for your great interest in China, in the Communist Party of China. And I think I would like to quote Aker, the Mr. Secretary Elon Musk, that you will not understand China without understanding the Communist Party of China. Further in this statement, I would like to say without understanding the Communist Party of China, it will be difficult for you to understand China-Philippine relationship. So I was very appreciative for your continued attention, continued interest in China, in China-Philippine relations. And we have information section led by this gentleman, the spokesperson. Yes.
Mr. Ong Wu.
That's why, who is a workaholic, working around the clock. If you have any more questions, please send to him. I think he will answer your question very timely. And of course, I would like to thank Flores for ably organize this event. You're always dynamic, full of dynamic, full of energy. So thank you so much for inviting me to this event. And I would also like to thank the 3 reactors, that Secretary Elon Musk, Professor Tuazong and Professor Pitlo III, for your very thought-provoking, very enlightening remarks. That's while I was giving a presentation, actually, it's also a very good time to be enlightened. So I'm very thankful to you. I look forward to further discussion with you. And also, of course, very thankful to all my friends, for attending this event. Thank you.
Once again, thank you.